while I'm working on this, can I share an interesting observation that TA and I had last night? Oh, the circle's complete. Nice. We got the outline. Now we just need to fill it in. Yeah. So, I mean, we've all been in fandom long enough, haven't we? I think we're all pretty aware of like when people get really weird about certain characters. Not like obsessive, but I mean in the sense of like character does something bad and they're immediately labeled as just evil or a jerk or whatever. Like we've all seen it. And for the longest time, I thought it was just people with like a very, I don't know, just being weird about things. But no, Tia actually showed me a very interesting observation that someone made in one of their posts, where you can actually trace that sort of attitude to a very how'd they describe it? I'm trying to remember. Well, first, it's based in the idea that people are, by their nature, inherently, you know, bad. Like, people are naturally cruel, mean, judgmental, nasty, or whatever. And from that initial premise comes the expectation that whenever someone is nice, they're actually covering up their quote unquote true nature. It's based in the idea that you are who you like, you're your true self on your worst day. Or, you know, the classic Joker line, people show you in their last moments who they really are. Which is nonsensical, by the way. That's not how that works. People do not show you who they really are in their last moments. They turn panicky and survival focused because that's the basic part of the brain taking over. It's very instinctual survival, the very instinctual desire for survival kicking in and suppressing what makes you who you are. You are not who you are in your worst moments. You are who you are in your best moments. Like, who you actually present yourself as to the people you're closest to and you feel most comfortable with. That is who you are as a person. And the other expectation that comes from this is, of course, the idea that because, you know, characters in these stories will... I'm trying to find the hole. Characters in these stories will then, you know, have bad moments where they will feel, you know, angry or afraid or just lash out in fear or desperation. Some people take that and assume, based on the initial premise that people are inherently cruel and bad and only suppressing their true negative qualities with a facade of kindness, then those who then lash out like that are showing who they quote unquote really are. Which is then where a lot of the moral judgments come in and where people feel comfortable labeling even very kind and very optimistic characters as fake or evil or whatever. So with that perspective in mind, suddenly it makes a lot more sense. It's the cynical, misanthropic interpretation of every bit of character interaction. Yeah, like, it's not just in fandoms, it's an unfortunately very common perspective people have. Hey, beehives. Where if you take someone on their worst day, then the expectation is that's who they actually are as a person, as opposed to just someone having a really terrible day. It's dumb. It's very dumb. Like, it's part of the same extended mindset that sees any sort of, like, optimism or idealism toward human nature as being inherently naive or short-sighted, and therefore treats... Oh, hey, copper. And therefore treats anything resembling... It's like the idea that people have to be all good all the time if they actually practice what they preach. And if they have one bad moment or they lash out or whatever, it's like, it's treated as like some sort of gotcha moment where they're somehow that's meant to be their true um perspective or behavior or whatever. And it's just so dumb. It's so nonsensical. Yeah, for real. Like, I understand that we all have our moments and we all say and do things we don't mean. Oh, that was another one. That was another major aspect of it. The idea that when people do say mean things or they lash out or whatever, somehow that's meant to be taken as them. It's the idea that cruelty and bad behavior of any kind is always completely 100% voluntary and intentional. People don't say mean things by accident or because they're angry and they don't actually mean it. No, they say it because that's how they actually are or whatever. You know, that's the idea. As opposed to just someone having a really bad day and you hit a nerve with them and they get mad and they say something they don't mean and they feel awful about it. And this goes beyond just fandoms in general, and I think should extend into human behavior when I say don't judge people whenever they have a bad day. Like first impressions are overrated in my opinion. Like you're never going to know somebody based on a single interaction with them the first time you meet them. Like you might see them on a really bad day. You might see them on their best day. You might see them on a very normal day that doesn't let them really express their personality in any meaningful way. You're never going to know someone just from a first impression. And I think we treat first impressions with way more weight and meaning than they really deserve. Where it's just a matter of, hey, you know, I don't really know you yet. And you're never going to know someone on your first meeting with them. You only really get to know someone when you sit down and you talk with them and you get to see what experiences you share, what those that you don't share, what interests you have, what interests you don't have, what like maybe what sorts of worldviews you both have and how those vary. It's just a case of actually getting to know somebody as opposed to, you know, hey, I met you once at a party, you were drunk, you were angry and ranting about something, so I'm going to act like angry drunk is who you are as a person. Sometimes who you meet who is like how they appear, other times they're just not having a good time and end up being an ass because they don't have the self-control to stop themselves in the moment. Yeah, exactly. We are not who we are in our worst moments, and it's really important to remember that and always tell yourself again and again that you are not who you are on your worst days. Because I've known people, and I still know people who are very, like, insecure about that sort of thing. They're very nervous. They have moments where they lash out and they say things they don't mean. And it. When you learn not to take these things personally, it really helps. Like, it really helps both your mental health and their mental health. Where you can just tell yourself that it's not who they really are. Like, I know that it's very important not to blame like someone's bad behavior strictly on mental health. Like if they lash out and hurt you, they hurt you. You know, there's no changing that, but if you understand that their behavior actually is not the result of intentional harm, like they're not deliberately trying to hurt you for their own benefit. It really was just a case of no impulse control or no um awareness of the moment maybe. Like someone who just is not fully in control of what they're saying or fully aware of what they're saying or the implications of what they're saying. Because I think it's pretty weird to be able to say with a straight face that somebody knows exactly what they're saying and doing every moment of every day. I don't think that anyone I've ever met has been capable of that. Where you're able to say and do things with absolute clarity and sincerity at every moment when necessary. That to me sounds like a really weird ideal of social interaction. I wish I knew what to say in any given moment. Yeah, like, you need to understand human nature is fundamentally irrational. We rarely say what we actually think or feel. That's not always a bad thing. You know, sometimes we get mad and we think things we don't mean. And we say like playfully we say we're gonna kill somebody when we're upset with them, but obviously we don't actually mean we're going to end their life. Yeah, like sometimes you just don't have a filter. Some people just say what's on their mind, and it's not directly meant to be hurtful. Like, they may not fully grasp the implications of what they're saying. I was actually watching another stream a few months ago where the person in question they were talking about how okay, what they're trying to say is there are life experiences that like harden you and make you tougher, especially when they're necessary. But they didn't really grasp what they were actually saying in that moment because they were saying, okay, their exact words were, "Trauma is the best way to grow as a person," which no, that's not how you grow as a person. That's how you become traumatized. Trauma is not character building. And me and everyone in chat, yeah, like they didn't mean like literally, you know, that sort of thing. What they were trying to get across was, you know, how bad experiences can help somebody grow as a person. But the word they used was trauma. And I know they didn't mean it literally, like being traumatized makes you stronger. Because in a lot of cases, it doesn't. It makes you very unhealthy, very unhappy. Yeah, yeah. What you say when you're emotional and what you say when you're rational can be two very different things. And it's important to actually keep in mind that the things that people say when they lash out and they're angry, if they're at odds with who they are as people on the regular, I think it's okay for you to consider that maybe they were just having a bad day. Maybe they were upset with something. That doesn't mean that, you know, they shouldn't apologize if they said something that actually hurt you. It's this very like negative shunning attitude where people will take any bit of like emotional lashing out and act as if that was meant as a personal attack, intentionally so, and therefore that any kindness they show you afterward is inherently manipulative, when no, apologizing is not manipulation, guys. Okay, it can be. To clarify, it can be. But you need to weigh the difference between somebody who actually understands that they hurt you and wants to make amends versus someone who is just apologizing so they can be forgiven and stop feeling bad about it. And so other people will stop feeling bad about it. But the key is that you can look out for those behaviors and understand the differences between somebody who actually has your best interest in mind and somebody who doesn't, who will say hurtful things with no regard for your well-being, who will just apologize for their own benefit, who doesn't really care that they hurt you, but they care that hurting you could harm what connection they have with you, and therefore how they can affect you. Yeah, apologies are not manipulative when they're genuine. Like, we should never treat emotional connections of any kind, when they're genuine, as malicious. As inherently malicious, I should say. Where, because you have that close connection with somebody, that means... Okay, I understand why some people feel this way. I really do. Because if you've been hurt like that, it's kind of easy to feel, you know, like some people just want to hurt you. And when your only experience with these sorts of relationships or emotions is through bad interactions with people or manipulation or some kind, then you're going to start to see that sort of thing as, excuse me, as inherently manipulative when it's not. And it's very, very important not to read malice into every person's intentions with you. Because a lot of people, I think people at their core really do just want to help each other. And they want the best for each other. And that really makes some people angry for some reason. Like, oh, you don't know what it's really like, man. People are just so awful to each other. They're just so awful to me. It's like, okay, I understand you had some really bad life experiences. I understand people hurt you. I understand you were hurt by somebody you trusted. I'm not dismissing that at all. I'm very sorry that happened to you. I'm very sorry that you don't feel comfortable getting close to others now. Like, nobody should have to go through that. That's awful. But it doesn't then follow that because you had a bad experience, that everyone who acts this way and who says these things and does these things then is exactly like the person who hurt you. I get the association with it. I understand that aspect. But you can't then say that everyone who is kind is not. You can't then say that every person who wants to reach out to you is secretly evil and only cares about themselves and will hurt you and abandon you as soon as they get the opportunity. Because that's not true. It's really not. I'm very sorry that happened to you, Sparks. That's... Nobody should have to go through that. It sucks. I just find it kind of... I find it very foolish and short-sighted to say that because you had... And I'm not talking about you specifically, I'm talking about people who get weird about this stuff. I mean, like... I find it very short-sighted to say that because you had a bad experience with anybody, then that means that everybody who has any kind of positive experience with any relationship or person or situation is just wrong. Like, you act as if only your negative worldview and your negative experiences are what's inherently real about human relationships. That by only seeing the worst aspects, by only allowing yourself to focus on the negative and the pain and the manipulation and the cruelty, that therefore you have some quote-unquote truth about human nature, when in reality you just had a bad experience with somebody who was cruel to you for no reason. And that's all it really is. You just had a bad experience with someone. That doesn't say anything about society or people or relationships or emotions as a whole. It just means that you had a bad experience, and that doesn't need to define who you are as a person. It doesn't need to define who anyone else is as a person. And it doesn't mean that other people couldn't still care about you. It doesn't mean that you can't make friends. It doesn't mean that the friendships you have aren't based on real emotion. Like, I get it. I do understand why people would feel uncomfortable or nervous getting close to people after they have a really bad experience like that. And I would never judge anybody for feeling like they're not in a good place where they feel they can trust people. Like, I understand. I get it. It's awful when it does happen. And it's completely valid to feel hurt by that and upset with that. But it doesn't then follow that because you had that experience, that somehow you're more well-informed than other people, and you can therefore talk down to them, or condescend to them, or treat them like trash for not sharing your worldview, and not feeling like everyone is out to get them. You know what I mean? It's just some people are so overly cynical and so unwilling to accept any sort of kindness that it sort of becomes self-fulfilling prophecy where they're afraid of being alone, and so they intentionally isolate themselves and make themselves feel worse because they believe that pain is the only thing that's real, that's valuable to understand or experience, and so therefore they don't try to actually understand anybody or get close to anybody. And that's really sad. That just feels like a really sad way to live to me. You know. Like, for everyone in chat and everyone watching this, if you guys have ever been hurt by things, it's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to feel that kind of life is very sad and only makes you more lonely, I feel. Yeah, I agree. Like, it's a self-imposed isolation where people feel like... I'm not trying to generalize here. I'm not trying to say that everybody is like this. But it's especially the case with people who are very, like, doomerist, who are very cynical and misanthropic, where they will just completely dismiss people in general. And then they get sad and lonely and angry, and it doesn't occur to them that it's the lack of human companionship that's making them so upset. You know, you need to be willing to meet people. You need to be willing to reach out to others. And it's really, really... Okay, I actually implore everyone watching this right now, I implore you, you need to see the good in other people. I know that can be really hard and really scary, and a lot of things have been going on lately that make that seem unrealistic, that make that seem short-sighted, but it's very, very important that we all see goodness in each other, that we try and reach out and try to make people feel accepted and feel understood and appreciated and loved and like they're part of the community. Because when people feel less lonely and they feel less isolated, then it then contributes to them wanting to be part of that community and wanting to help make things better and wanting to help make the world a better place. Like, when you start with the premise that people don't care, or that they only care about themselves, or they only will hurt you if you allow yourself to get close to them, then that's just going to cause... It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where you don't feel comfortable enough or willing enough to reach out to others. And that's really lonely and really, really unhealthy. And I speak from experience there. I admit I had that mindset for a while, and it did not make me feel more contented or wise or smarter or anything like that. It just made me very isolated and very unhappy, where all I kind of did was just wallow in my own misery, because what else could I do? I didn't feel like I could really meet people. You know what I mean? It's like they treat the idea of kindness as a fiction, and whenever an act of non-kindness exists, it's treated as some sort of gotcha moment where it's it's so silly. It's so childish. Like, some people will cling on to their cynicism and their misanthropy as much as possible because they think it makes them wiser or more informed, when it's really more that they're just scared of getting close to others. And I get it. Again, I don't shame people for feeling unwilling to actually reach out to others when they don't feel ready, when they have those bad experiences. I don't judge them for that. I judge them for acting as if being scared and being traumatized and being bitter and angry about things makes them wiser or more informed about things. Depression does not make you smarter. Depression does not make you any inherently more wise or mature than anybody else. Trust me, it doesn't. Man, I really went off there, didn't I? I didn't mean to go into a deep speech like that. Yeah. It's just, I see so much negativity in the world, and I feel like a lot of it would be solved if we could just take some time to understand that things are not inherently bad. People are not inherently cruel. Life is not inherently about struggle and pain and hardship. These things happen. They're parts of life. They're aspects of your existence, and in many cases, they're sadly going to be unavoidable. But just because they're unavoidable does not mean you should treat them as the only thing that's inherently true about being alive, about having those experiences, about being a person. Your life doesn't have to be defined by pain and misery and hardship. And we do no good for ourselves if we act as if happiness and comfort and emotional stability is the only thing we should ever consider to be the norm. You know what it's like? It's like when it's like when parents treat treat their kids like garbage, and make them feel miserable and upset all the time. And when you call them out on that, it's like, well, I'm just teaching them what the real world is like. Like, okay, I understand. There's going to be hard times. You can't always be there for your kid. You can't promise them they're always going to be happy, or that they're always going to be, be happy. But when that happens, all you're really teaching them is that there's no safe place for them. There's no state in which they can feel willing to open up about their own fears and insecurities, because you're teaching them that kindness and, like, you're going to teach them that reaching out for help of any kind is going to be met with being shut down, or being told that they need to toughen up, or that nobody is going to care about them. And that is damaging and cruel, and not what parents should be doing for their children. Like, you're not teaching them how to be strong. You're teaching them to bottle everything up and never say anything about how they actually feel. All you're really gonna do is, like, lead to your kid never feeling emotionally secure because they don't have a basis for which to compare anything to anything. If you treat them with cruelty, all they're going to understand is cruelty. And that's not going to make them tougher. It's going to make them very scared and insecure about anything. Yeah, and you're going to destroy your connection with that kid. Because then they're going to realize you didn't teach them what they needed to learn, and they're going to be like, "Okay, I had to learn all this myself." Yeah, exactly. Why won't my kid talk to me anymore? It's just like I understand why it happens, but I will never agree with it. Cruelty is not the only state of being. It's not the only real thing. Like, I believe very strongly in being kind, being humanistic, and seeing the goodness in people. Because, like, I've told this to TA before, too. Any idiot can tell you that the world has problems. That's not wise or profound. That's just the fact that problems exist. Anybody can just say, oh, yeah, things are bad. That sucks. Like, okay, congratulations. Did you have a point? Were you actually going somewhere with that, or were you just trying to tell me that bad things exist, therefore my worldview is invalid? When the reality is, good things and bad things have always existed beside each other. We've had problems, we've had solutions. We have problems, and we're finding solutions. We will have problems, but we will find solutions. The most important part of handling any situation, I think, is first being able to tell yourself, okay, how can I actually solve this? How can I get through this? How can I find a solution to what I'm facing currently? Rather than just saying, problem exists, therefore, world bad. I'm simplifying, obviously, but you get what I mean. Hang on, I need some water. Yes. What's another one? Day and I have had a lot of discussions like this over the years, and we learned quite a lot. Yeah, I wanted to add some flowers, make it look nice. Like the most important part in like I keep saying, like the most important part in any situation is first understanding what the problem is and then asking, okay, how can I solve this? And then working toward steps on solving it. I don't understand people who will look at a situation, see that bad things exist and that problems exist, and just not try to do anything about it. Just, they feel content to say, okay, bad thing exists, therefore, world bad, not gonna try. Don't try. Bad thing exists. Like, here's the funny paradox I've noticed when it comes to a discussion about human nature. Like, you have someone who has a very cynical view of people, like, at blah, blah, blah. Someone who has a very cynical view of people, uh, according to their core nature, where, either they're inherently good or inherently cruel. And you see someone being kind. Their immediate response would be kindness naive, kindness silly, kindness facade, kindness is not real, blah 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 blah. But it's very easily counteracted by both perspectives, actually. One is the idea that because people are inherently good, then that means that someone who chooses to be good is simply acting according to human nature. And therefore that becomes more of a statement on people as a whole. Where you have people who, the idea there is that cruelty and pain and all the bad things that go on in the world are the exception, not the norm. That's not what people are inherently like at their core. But on the other hand, if you do accept the premise that people are inherently cruel by nature, and you see someone being kind, what that then means is that, yeah, okay, people are cruel, they can be cruel, but this also demonstrates that they're capable of changing that. That they are not beholden to their instincts, and therefore, if one person can be kind, anybody could be kind. And so therefore, all people are capable of great cruelty, but also great kindness. So it really kind of blows a hole in the idea that because bad things exist, there's no reason to be kind. Or there's no reason to believe in anyone else. Because it proves that no matter how you view human nature, an act of kindness is proof of either our species' inherent goodness or its ability to transcend its nature and be kind. And be compassionate toward itself and to others. It's like the famous line from Parthenax in Skyrim. What's better, to be born good or to overcome your evil nature through great effort? Do you accept the idea that you are just good by nature? Are you... is it better to say that someone was just born good and them doing good things is how they are? I know my health. I'm keeping an eye on it, don't worry. Is it better to say that a being is more good if it's born good? Or does someone who chooses to be kind in spite of everything about who they are as not just a person, but even as a species, if they choose to be kind, if they choose to act differently, if they choose to overcome their nature and then instead choose to be outgoing and caring and compassionate, does that put more emphasis on their choice to be good and therefore all their good actions? I think my favorite perspective on this actually came from a bit of Jewish philosophy that I read about once, where the question was, what's better, somebody who has never done anything wrong in their life, or somebody who has done wrong but chose to seek forgiveness for it? Is it better to never do bad things or to do bad things and try to learn from them? And the perspective from the text I read said that it's actually better to do bad things and make mistakes and then try to overcome them than it is to never do them at all. Because it means that you understand the difference between a good deed and a bad deed. It means that you understand the moral complexities and nuances behind these actions. And so therefore, you understand your actions have weight to them. They have consequence. And so, whenever someone apologizes in that situation, it comes from the heart. It means that they did understand what they did wrong, they know that they caused pain and harm, and they want to fix it. That someone who has done wrong has more of a grasp on morality when they seek forgiveness than someone who never does anything wrong to begin with. It's sort of a case of like learning by experience, but through morality. And I found that really interesting. Like, it really challenges the idea that people are, like, people can just be inherently cruel by nature. And instead, that, oops. You can also bone meal those flowers to get more from them. Yeah, I know. I'm just decorating. You know, the idea is that, what was I saying? I kind of went off on a tangent there, but, my point with that was, you know, whether you accept the idea that people are just inherently good or that they become good by choice or through some other means, it doesn't negate the idea that goodness and kindness and decency are somehow less real than pain and cruelty and misery. And when people tell you those things, it's really important not to take them to heart, because I think it shows that they are way less. They've had way less experience with kindness. That to them, what is kind is, the idea of sharing their own experiences in that way. Where, because they were hurt, that means that all they can really do is try and keep other people from getting hurt. But to them, it's like, okay, like, you had some bad experiences, but that doesn't make you the moral authority on what is and isn't, good. Yeah, I love flowers. Like, one of the moments that TA said really stood out for her from our Tetra Danganronpa reactions was when Kazutoshi was talking to Tamba about, how much he doesn't like people. And he was like, people are awful. Like, you give them something and they will burn you. And she rightfully brought up Ken. And he was like, well, Ken's different. And she said, like, the moment where I was like, so the fact that Ken is kind to you completely invalidates everything you just said. Because it's true. Like, when you act as if people as a whole are, awful to you, but you meet someone who isn't, then that's proof that there's an exception to the rule. And if there's one exception, there could be a lot of exceptions. It's just an unfortunate case where people meet those who don't have their best interest in mind and who don't treat them with the kindness they really need. And that shapes a lot of them into thinking that, they won't get that from other people. When that's not true. I always try to be kind to people. I always try to show them the best. And I have my off days. I've had days where I feel miserable and feel angry, but I don't make it their problem. Like, sometimes I go to them for support or to just talk about it, where we can come up with a solution. That's really been one of my major New Year's resolutions, where I try not to get too fixated on, problems going on in the world or in my life or anything like that. Where I actually try and find solutions to these things. Where I stop and go, okay, this isn't working out like I want it to, or this isn't what I wanted things to be. What can I do about it? How can I fix this? Like, when you're actually willing to approach your problems from a constructive point of view instead of just thinking that being miserable all the time and just feeling like nothing will ever get better. That's not wisdom. That's not intelligence. That's not you being more mature. That's just a depressive attitude. That's just mental. It's a mental illness happening. It's you being very unwell. Yeah, it's just giving up. It's not trying. And it's like I've always said, pessimistic nihilism is a self-fulfilling prophecy, where if you don't believe things can get better, you stop trying to make them better, and then you guarantee that they won't get better. It becomes a case of just not trying to... Okay, this is another thing that actually really annoys me. So, sorry if this turns into another, like, long diatribe, but... I've noticed that for a lot of people, when they talk about problems going on in life, or, you know, whether it's the world at large or their own life, there's this tendency for a lot of them to treat those problems as if there's some intractable truth. Like they're just an aspect of life. You know, like the rain, or sunrise, or changing seasons or whatever. Like bad things happening is just inherently a part of life. Which, okay, to a degree that's true. In some sense, yeah. You can't necessarily avoid bad circumstances happening to you. Ever. But the way they talk about it becomes more like, you know, like there's nothing they can do about it. They act as if, oh, I have a problem, but I just want to complain about it. Or, there's a problem, so... whatever. It's a case of acting as if a situation that's going on in the world, or in your own life, or in someone else's life, is unsolvable. That it's just a fact of life, and nothing you can do as an individual will have any effect on it. When that's not true at all. And in my experience, that really comes from people who don't want any responsibility for it. Like, they don't want to feel like they have any obligation to do anything about it. Because they feel like, I don't know, maybe they just feel like it's beyond their control, or they would rather surrender that control and act as if it's something they can't fix. Because if there's no way for them to fix it, they bear no responsibility for it. And so therefore they don't have to feel bad about it. Which is a very, very unhealthy way to look at any problem. You need to consider how you can actually solve any given situation. And it's easy to feel like, you know, you're small, or you're just one person, and that there's nothing you can really do to change anything. But that's not true. I know it's really become a cliche at this point to say that anybody can make a difference, but it's only because it's true. Anybody really can. Like, people who come from nowhere, who actually come from nowhere, who have nothing to their name and just build themselves from the ground up, have become great, like, great people, great leaders, great entertainers, great educators of all kinds. And it's really, really, really important to be able to say that you do have control over your life and your problems and your relationships and everything going on in your situation, whatever it might be. You can't just tell yourself that you have no control over what's going on, because that's just going to make you feel more helpless and more alone, and it's really just a waste of mental energy, because you're spending it on telling yourself there's nothing you can do when you could be seeking solutions of any kind. You could be trying your hardest to understand what the problem is. and trying to get in touch with people who can help you if you really don't have what it takes to solve the issue. Like, it doesn't make you smarter or better or more worldly or more mature if your only approach to any problem is just saying, yeah, that sucks, but what you gonna do? You know what I mean? If it sounds like I have a lot of beef with negativity and cynicism, it's only because I have a long history with it. And I understand how it's not good for your health. Yeah, it sure does. Misery sure does love company. You know, I know a lot of people who probably could solve their problems, who could be tackling the things going on in their lives. And they spend a lot of that time just feeling miserable about it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't ever feel sad about anything. I'm not saying that, you know, because sadness is a core part of the human experience. It's important to allow yourself to feel emotions when they come. So if you feel sad, feel sad. If you feel happy, feel happy. If you feel angry, feel angry. There's nothing right or wrong or fake or whatever about allowing yourself to feel things. Which, okay, circling back to the initial topic that I had. Yeah, exactly. It's very cathartic to let it out and feel, to let yourself feel things. And this circles back around to what I was saying before about, like, how we kind of view human nature at times as both inherently cruel and those acts of cruelty as completely intentional and purposeful rather than lashing out or whatever. Because on more than one occasion, like in the last few years, I have actually had to have talks with people where I need to tell them, no, you are not being inherently manipulative by, you know, wanting to talk to somebody or feeling a certain way. Like, having emotions, caring about other people, wanting to be with a friend or spend time with somebody, those are not bad things, and you are not a bad person for feeling attachment to somebody. And it's really, really important to not, like, I talk about this in the sense of viewing other people's actions, but it's also really important to view it your own actions through that same lens, where you will, you know, judge whatever you do as a secret, like secretly manipulative is the key phrase here. It's the idea that somebody could be secretly manipulating you, or that you could be secretly manipulating somebody else to the point that you don't even aren't even aware of it. And that's ridiculous. Like, okay, yes, some people can secretly be manipulating you, and maybe your intentions might not be as pure as you think they are, or you tell yourself that they are, but that's very situational. That's not going to be some inherent discussion of your nature as a person. And if you view your actions through that lens, then you're going to start second guessing every relationship you have with somebody, where you just start to feel like you're just inherently a bad person for caring about other people. And nobody should feel like a bad person for caring. I actually had a discussion like this the other day too, where me and some people in another server were actually debating the term parasocial, where somebody was like, oh, well, this person that I'm following is not in a great situation right now, but I feel really parasocial because I care about them. And I was like, it's not parasocial to care about other people. Do you not know what the word parasocial means? Like, when you're parasocial with somebody, it's acting as if you have a relationship with them, like a close personal relationship with them, when you don't. When they're like a stranger talking to you on the internet and speaking to you in a broad and general sense. But that doesn't mean that any kindness that they give you or that you give them is inherently less valuable. It doesn't mean that it's weird or cringe or parasocial to care about them and their well-being. Because we all want to care about each other. We all want the best for the people we care about. And yeah, like I brought up the actual, like, more close to definition description of parasociality, where it's like, you know, it's where you act as if you're friends with somebody when they don't even know you exist. Where you don't actually have a kind of emotional relationship with them. Parasocialism is spooky at times. I really hope I never act like that. See, that's another thing too. We always kind of tell ourselves that we hope we'll never act a certain way. And to a degree, there's some truth to that, where we feel like, you know, we get worried about the ways we behave, where our behavior can change. Sure, it can. But I think it's also really important to keep in mind that if you're aware of how you feel about a certain situation and how you'd never want to be in that situation or react to that situation a certain way, then I think you're kind of in the clear. Or at least you're in a better situation than a lot of other people. Because when you're aware that a certain behavior is bad, you're also more aware of your own actions in that sense. Especially compared to somebody who doesn't consider their own actions. Who doesn't actually, you know, think about how they interact with people or how they, how their behavior comes across and what harm can be done by it. Where they just don't consider what is acceptable behavior. And that's the core of parasocialism, I believe. Where people will not respect boundaries. You gotta respect boundaries. That's the biggest thing. Always respect other people's boundaries. Where, like, you don't know them. You don't know them on a personal level. You just know what they present to you as a public figure. But that does not mean that you are then, that your kindness is then inherently less valuable. It doesn't mean that the good that they show you or that you show them is therefore less meaningful. Like, you don't need to be close personal friends with somebody to still make a meaningful impact on your life. Or an impact on their life. Like, there's a lot of streamers I don't know. I don't know them on a personal level. But I've exchanged words with them. I've shared things with them. I've shared money with them. But I've, you know, I've tried to make their day better, however I can. I've tried to share information with them that they may find interesting. I tried to make their days a little bit brighter. And I think it's gotten to the point where they do, like, at least recognize me. Like, they see my name and they know who I am. So, I don't consider that friendship, obviously, because, you know, we don't know each other. I mean, we don't know each other yet, hopefully. Because I would like to know them, personally. But I also respect their boundaries, and I don't try to make things about me. Like, it's about them. And yeah, it's very important to have people who are willing to, discuss their boundaries with you, who are willing to say, you know, this is not okay. Please don't do this. And it's like, okay, that's cool. That's fine. That's really good. Thank you for letting me know. And again, like, it's important to not view yourself strictly in a negative light in that situation. Because it's like, I say all this, but I'm also like very, I can be very harsh on myself. I get like really in my own head a lot of the time. I get very conscious about the things I say and the ways I act. But I still try and be authentic with who I am and what I'm trying to present. And I don't think it's a bad thing for us to be kind to each other even when we're not friends. Like, even if it's a complete stranger. Like, just saying nice things to people on the street is really meaningful. It can really make someone's day even. Where they feel, you know, they just feel happy. They feel happy that somebody took the time to say something kind to them and make them feel appreciated. Like, I like getting comments like that from people. Whether it's on my blog or it's on YouTube or here on Twitch or wherever. Where if we just take the time to say, "Hey, I'm glad that you exist. I appreciate that you're here. I'm glad for everything that you do." That to me is like, honestly, sometimes I feel like it's a lot more meaningful coming from a stranger than coming from somebody who's a close friend. As weird as that might sound. But I mean that in the sense of like a friend has demonstrated that they care about you repeatedly. Like, they've demonstrated that your well-being and your kindness and your relationship with them are very important to them. So you're going to expect them to say they appreciate your existence. And absolutely, that's true. Everything you have with them is good. You should have a close friendship like that. But when it comes from a total stranger who says all that to you, who doesn't even really know you, but is still willing to stop and say, "Hey, I'm glad you're here. I appreciate all that you do." I think that is also really, really impactful for a lot of people. For me, especially. Okay, I've been talking for a bit now. I'm going to take a small break and eat this orange that's been sitting on my desk.